That's awesome. I'm excited. All right, we are live for number 5. This is Access 360 episode 5, and nobody knows what the topic is yet. So this is going to be fun and exciting. The topic is delegation. Delegation. We probably should have a formal definition, but if I were going to define delegation, it means taking stuff that you may have to do or get done, and how do you give it graciously, gift it to maybe someone else to help lighten the burden. Sometimes things get delegated to us. So it goes both ways, but delegation can be as leaders, as founders, as entrepreneurs, wherever we are in business and in life. Sometimes it's challenging because high performers, my experience, personal experience is I got to do this all myself because one, nobody else could do it as good as I can, or I just have a challenge letting go of things and maybe teaching others to do it in the same fashion, or maybe it's I have a challenge just putting an SOP together or a playbook together. And as we've built Access Virtual Staffing as an example, we're building a team. Harold's here. He's in here helping out with video and all kinds of things. And there's challenges sometimes saying, hey, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And this is what needs to get done. And so that's the topic of conversation today for this particular conversation. I'm going to change the view here as we're navigating some fun stuff. We've got a little speaker view. Brian, you just happened to be off mute, so I'm going to come to you first. What sparks for you as we say delegation? Do you think like
Yeah.
easy, awesome, challenge? Where are you at?
So I've done a lot of consulting with small law firms, and a lot of lawyers have a big problem delegating at certain parts, especially at the beginning. And they don't realize, but they're basically living life with like a 300-pound weight on them, and they can't grow. They're shooting themselves in the foot, and it's annoying because they're smart people, and I want to shake them. And the whole thing with delegation is what's the intention behind the delegation? You should know how to do it. You don't need to be an expert, but I can't just give someone to delegate someone and know nothing. You need to be in control of your business. If you're not in control, you're out of control. But there's a good enough factor. And so the thing that people get messed up is it's like, oh, well, I could do this document better than you can. Okay, but is it good enough? And what's making the money? Like, okay, maybe I could make this brief better than you can, but the brief isn't making me money. What's making me money is more clients. So everything that's not making money needs to be delegated. Everything that is making money, I should be doing as the owner. That's the answer.
We're done. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Access 360 podcast. I think we just figured it all out. This will be a short, not a long form. Thank you. I love it. I love it. But I think this is kind of, in some ways, I appreciate the energy, the fire, and the certainty around it, because sometimes that's the biggest challenge is like just saying, hey, let's get this done. Let's put this in place. Let's hand this off. Let's go. Versus like, I'm not sure, especially if it's new. And it's understandable. A lot of times when we're working in the business and we're overwhelmed, to be able to actually take a breath, take a step back, pause, and then say, oh, where could I have this done? How do I get this off my plate? And as we've worked, actually, it's funny you say that, Brian. One of our target audiences is lawyers, law firms, and in particular, small law firms. And it's not easy. It's not easy, especially if you've been conditioned to doing things a certain way for so long, to say, there's another way. Let me put that in place. I see Lisa's got her hand raised. Lisa, what are you thinking about all this?
This is a great topic because it's one that I discuss with leadership, and I understand where Brian's coming from with law firms. I discuss leveraging versus delegation. And I think that sometimes, especially when you find operators who you're working to turn into owners who are resistant of letting go, using leveraging instead of delegation really helps them start to make that move. So, what is the difference between delegation and leveraging? Well, in delegation, you're giving a command, giving an order, telling them what it should look like, what it should be, and then leaving it in their hands. Whereas with leveraging, it's more of a partnership, and you get into more of the why they're doing this, how it's going to elevate them. You give them a strong role, a strong ownership in the process, but you also give them some autonomy. And so you get them really into the appreciation of why and how they're working. And that actually usually ends up in a better quality as well as a better team cohesion. So if you think of it as delegation is more passive and command based, whereas leveraging is more proactive and collaborative. It still gets the work off of the shoulders of the operator you're working to turn into an owner, but it does it in a way that it doesn't feel disconnected, it doesn't feel out of control, and it begins to build the team underneath them that they're going to want so they don't always have to delegate or leverage everything out. That team begins to become proactive and vision focused, if that makes sense.
I love how you've twisted, not twisted in a bad way or a manipulative way, but like have us look at the language. Like delegation might have a certain meaning to whoever is hearing it or using it versus leverage. Because leverage in some ways is like, oh, leverage is like in some ways the outcome or perceived outcome of the act of delegation. Because now you can cause leverage, like in the financial terms, it's where we're increasing the value of money or how it can be used to a certain perspective. Like how do we leverage the assets that we do have? And I think there's maybe even more empowering context to that. What I realized as we started this conversation, just because we're doing this regularly now, I didn't say this is the Access 360 podcast. We bring great people and ideas together so that they can evolve. And there's a power in mastermind. There's a power in bringing great people together. Brian has been here for a number of conversations, so he's kind of a resident member of the Access 360. And Lisa's now becoming a more regular member for her second show. And I get the pleasure of introducing, we'll say he's our special guest today, but he's incredible all around dude. He tunes into the morning rush on regular basis and is one of our core and I'd say pivotal members of the morning rush community. But also he is someone who's had a lot of executive leadership experience in a lot of different ways, from the military to the nonprofit, and I'm sure a lot of other things, because he's also now on a new journey. So without further ado, Thorin, you do have your hand raised, so I'm guessing you've got something about this topic, but how are you today?
Doing well, David. That was an awesome intro. And language is powerful. And a lot of words were used that did tie into what I'm going to share. So as we're discussing leverage and delegation, right? Coming from an executive point of view, from a leader's point of view, from a man who served in the military, from a combat vet's point of view, it's all about the person, right? And do you have the person to delegate to? That style that Lisa talked about of leveraging is just a style of delegation, right? It's a manner of how you get something done. Sure, I could tell you to do it, but are you qualified to even do the thing that I just told you to do, right? Did I train you in the manner in which you need to be trained for me to give you the order that I gave you to do? Is the mission aligned with the training that we're even doing to move this thing forward? So sure, I might want to make a whole lot of money, Brian, but the team might not be qualified around me in order to even do that. I got to make sure that I have the right people around me to delegate things to even consider delegation, team building, skill building, knowledge base, personnel management. It's all part of executive leadership. How do we get this thing done? Who are we doing this thing with? And where are we going? I
Yeah, I'd
often
love
had to face those questions, right? So it's an awesome conversation, sir. Awesome. What were you
Well,
going
I'd
to
love
say?
to go. I'll go a little deeper with you, Thorin, because I think what we've experienced just in our business alone, internally and with our clients, is sometimes we're crystal clear on who we want and the role that we need to fill. Now, the ideal person is not always available, or the person we think is the ideal person may not actually fit in exactly the way we thought. And what I've also experienced is it's never perfect. And so I think one, you want to make sure you know who you're looking for and try to find the person who's the closest fit. But then I'm guessing, knowing who you are, it's also sometimes been, hey, I can kind of mentor this person. I can have them start to see how to take what I'm asking and build the skill sets as well. So how let's go that direction. How have you
Mhm.
encouraged someone to step into maybe a greater capacity than is their natural, like this is what I'm really good at?
Well, as a nonprofit leader, that's part of my everyday role when managing my team, right? To move this mission forward and to free me up to do things, I have to leverage people's talents, strengths, and their weaknesses. And often that put me in the position to be the strength, right? So for example, I had a team member who wants to lead, right? He had a great passion for it, but his skill for it wasn't there. Vice versa. My skill to be in front, to lead, to hold conversation, to communicate, to command a crowd, amazing, immaculate, right? I keep him with me when I do those type of things. I put him center stage and I'm there to catch him when he stumbles. And then I allow him gracefully to sit to the side again and to take note and to watch. And when I notice his level of comfortability and he's giving me that, let me go back in there, coach. Come on back in. Let's try this again. And you continue to do this process with everybody. Well, at least I did, right? Which means I had to grow in areas in which I didn't know I needed to grow in order to be that coach for others, to give them the comfort and the strength to stand in their weakness. That was part of my leadership style.
Yeah, it's not, and I think in some ways there's art to it, there's science to it, and there's what I'll also say is like it's a skill to learn how to navigate some of these scenarios. I remember, I think I've been in a lot of roles earlier on in my career where I was part of a corporate environment where it was clear that the leader was not a great delegator. But on the other hand, I've been with a lot of leaders who are incredible delegators, and there's a broad spectrum in between that. Um, let's go, Lisa. I've got your hand raised, and then we can rotate around, and I'm going to ask the question. Well, I have a question later on. Lisa, over to you.
I really like both what Brian said and then what Thorin came in behind it with. Brian said, even when you're going to delegate or if you're going to leverage out items of work, you have to know that role. You have to know what it takes to complete that task in a way that you can support whoever you're leveraging or delegating to, unless they're an expert better than you in that situation. But you should still understand what it takes. And I think Thorin was spot on with that when he said you have to know their strengths and weaknesses. Now, I tend to enhance people's strengths more than I focus on strengthening their weaknesses. I want to find people who I can really leverage what they're really good at. Now, if they want to learn, and I understand that, Thorne, if they want to learn how to be better at something, I am all for that. And I'm always going to, as you do, put them up, challenge them, support them, give them time to regurgitate, understand, filter through, and then go at it again. Especially my background came from training horses and riders, and it's not always seamless. And even if you have a great team, each are their own thinking being, right? So they might be really good overall at a task, but today might not be one of their days. One of them might be having an off day. And you have to learn how to help people um, navigate those peaks and valleys without having it like destroy their own self-confidence, and understand that that's not necessarily, that navigation isn't necessarily weakness, it's opportunity for growth. And I think you both like were spot on in that, and how we help bring that team more cohesively so they can take the pressure off of our shoulders and we can confidently move forward, not worrying about if they can do the job, because we know we've given them the tools because we understood it first.
I love it. I love it. Brian, you come off mute. Do you have something there?
I agree 100%. I think that a big challenge that people have, like let's just say the 80-20 principle, a lot of people are trying to work on the 80, and it's, I always talk about nuances and duality, right? You don't want to just be like, okay, fuck the 80, like I'm never going to learn anything. No, you still got to increase your skills. You want to get to that good enough factor, but if you're a great goalie, don't try to put it in the net. Like try to block the puck from the net. You know what I'm saying? Increase your skills. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be skating better. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be shooting. Like you got to do the basics, but really hone in on that 20%, and just that's how you get to master level. And I think people get a little bit crazy with that stuff, but I definitely think like what you said, when you hire someone and they're great at something, keep building that thing that they're great at. At the same time, they should learn other things, but really increase that expertise. And Thorin, thank you for your service. I appreciate you.
I love it. Brian, any chance that had to do with, that reference had to do with something you experienced last night? I always love a good goalie and hockey reference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Islanders goalie was on fire last night. I thought he was awesome. And there was this young, I don't know the players anymore because I'm so out of the loop, but there was this young guy, not a goalie, young guy. He's awesome. He looks like a kid. He's probably like 17 years old. Phenomenal. Like they play great together because you could tell that they're both working on their skill set. That doesn't mean that I could probably put that young kid as a goalie, and if I if I try to take a shot, he's going to block it, right? But that's not the point.
Yeah, no, I think it's such a good point, is know your role, know your
Yeah.
giftings, know what your lane is. And that's part of why we might delegate is, hey, this is where I operate best. I don't need to be doing all this other stuff, the 80. I'll focus on the 20, and I'll find the people to do the 80. And I was thinking back as all of you were sharing about, what Dan Martell said, and some of the stuff that I listened to him. He wrote the book Buy Back Your Time, and it was, thinking about where
I didn't, but I actually did want to go back to what Thorin and you both said, which was about, understanding. I really was keying in on, and I forgot to mention it, how Thorin mentioned you have to know the requirements of the job, right? Before you even think about who you're going to put into the job. Because do I have enough training myself to be able to be the leader for these people in this position? I don't know what role you played in the military, Thorin. So I don't know if you were a pilot or if you were a seaman or if you were in the cavalry, but you're not going to be the expert in all areas, right? You're going to be the expert in your area. And if you have a task that requires something from outside of your area, say tank management, and you were a pilot, then you would need to go to the people who had the tanks and really key in on those skills and have those skills brought in to your fold by somebody else as you're learning, and they can be developing your team in that area. That's why I love doing joint venture partnerships, because I'm not excellent in everything, right? I'm excellent at what I'm excellent at.
Well,
But
this
I
is
need
true.
other people with me who are excellent at what they are excellent at. And that also helps to support my team.
Well, you use critical words, right? And team is a part of everything, whether you're in the military, whether you're playing a sport, whether you're in a business, right? That's a relatable term. the mission is still might be different. In sports, it might be to win the game, right? In combat, it's to win the victory for whatever that conflict is, right? In business, it's to be successful. That's the mission. Taking care of the team is important, right? Everybody plays a role. Defense, offense, right? The mailman, the intern, they're all important people to the mission. Where you sit in that chain is important. I often sat at the top of the chain, but I was so close to the bottom of the chain that it made it easy for me to see the care in the entire chain, right? And focus those things in those positions. Sometimes in business and in military, you don't get that closeness from top to bottom. So a lot of information, a lot of care is lost. I just had the ability and I was afforded the opportunity to be in that position. If I were Jeff Bezos, I'm probably not afforded the same opportunity to work with the entire chain of people and care for them in the manner that I was for my organization. I don't knock him for that. It's just a different level of structure, right? But the concept can still be there. Understanding that position, that there's a person in it. And I need to know the role of that position. And I have to understand how to care for the person who's doing it in order to properly delegate the things that we need or leverage their strengths and build their weaknesses to succeed and make success for all of us involved because I can't be successful if the person who I need to help me get this bomb across the line, football across the goal, puck across the goal is not mentally well, physically well, spiritually well enough in order for me to even talk sense to this person about this mission. But most of us don't have that capability. I was just afforded it. So that's just how I see things.
I
Brilliant.
love how you added that in. That is something that I actually require of any business I work with. Whatever meeting you're in, you must know the names of all of the attendees in the meeting and at least one personal fact, one thing that's important to them in their life. Because if you call on them or if they speak up, you need to connect to them on a human level. It's not just about the business. They cannot do their job well if their dad just died yesterday, right? They might be able to do their job okay, but when people start to acknowledge, hey, I understand what you're going through, or I'm here to support you. This is definitely a time of stress for you. How may I help you so that you can get through this time period and we can continue to be successful as a team? I think that's brilliant. And I'm so excited that you brought that up because I think it's vital to teamsmanship. It's not just what's going on here in our inner circle, it's also all the other things we bring in with us from life that affect all of our outcomes.
Brilliant. I'm back, guys. I'm back. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Thorin. We can call it a commercial break when we actually edit the podcast. So it's perfect. The Wi-Fi is back in order here. I have a question, maybe two, and we'll just go kind of around the horn on this. What business are you currently in or building? Like just short, like what are you doing in the world? And how are you or how are you planning to delegate or leverage moving forward? You may already be doing it, so you can share how you're already delegating or leverage, or you may have a vision. Because I think what's been valuable for me as I understand leverage and then have been doing more and more of it sometimes it's a mental exercise for us all to say, oh, how might I, how have I? And if somebody's listening to this and saying, I should be, it's good to have pathways that other people are using, like, oh, I could do that, or this is a way I could do it. So Brian, you're off mute. I'm going to come to you first. What are you doing in the world and how are you looking at leverage and delegation currently?
Yeah, I think that Thorin made a really good point with the motivation of the person instead of just like the title of the person, like who the person is, because I think a very important vital key in leadership and is knowing when to pet the dog and when to beat the dog and what's going to make them do what you want them to do. And if you pet the dog at the wrong time or beat the dog at the wrong time, you're not going to get the right results. And so I think that that's important. I think the motivation and humanizing is so important. And then as far as I'm going, like I'm really pushing my
Wait a minute, wait a
consulting
minute. I gotta pause there. I mean, I did put it in the chat, but Brian, are you beating dogs?
always. I love dogs. I love dogs. I hate cats. All dogs love me.
Love it, love it. Well, yeah. So
Um,
what are you doing, and then how are you looking at leverage delegation personally?
Yeah, so, I am leveraging and building my coaching consulting business. I sometimes use your people for VAs. I have another team that I'm using right now for different things like posting and scripts and content ideas. Some of these guys, they're kids, but they have like 500 to a million followers and different things like that. Like their view count is crazy. So they're teaching me about like duets and remixes and things like that. So basically that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing on people. Like, yeah, I have an idea and I know social media, but like this guy has taught me a couple of different things, and one of the guys that worked there, that he's probably like 23 or 24, taught me a lot of things that I didn't realize that were in front of my face on Instagram that I didn't even realize, and in front of my face on YouTube that I didn't realize. So knowing what you know and knowing that you don't know stuff and talking to the right people, and because that's one of the challenges, right? When you're growing, you don't know what you don't know, and so you don't even know what questions to ask sometimes. So like a good thing that I do is I'm like, okay, walk me through your process, because now I'm seeing their process and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, how did you do that? Why did you do that? What's your thinking behind that? Because I would have never done that. And that's how I've um, been able to shed light on my blind spots.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it, we talked a lot about people in this conversation, and obviously technology is kind of the elephant in the room, if not AI. And so it's who are the right people, whether it's on your team or that you have as resources for knowledge base and things that you may not be as maybe expert at. And I had a conversation with the CFO of another staffing firm yesterday. And I asked the question because some people will say, well, virtual assistants are going to be obsolete. And he said, well, I think because of AI, people with less or lower skill sets who know how to use the technology will actually become even more valuable because the human expertise may not be as needed because we've got the technology component. And so someone who's willing to work at a certain level or rate but knows how to use the technology, and we know how to put the technology in place so they can use it well. It's not like, hey, humans are going to be replaced. It's humans may just be utilized in different ways and with different capacities. So I'll hand it over. Well, Thorin, you've got your hand raised, so I'll give you a comment, but also the same question. What are you doing in the world, and how are you looking at leverage? Go ahead.
I think I was going to answer that quite naturally then. It flows. So what am I doing in the world right now? Actually, after I have resigned, right, from executive director of this nonprofit that I was managing for quite some time, still volunteering for the organization, but I'm also in a very awesome position in life that I don't think a lot of individuals get to be in. And this is my second opportunity to do so, where I'm going to go back to school, right? I was contemplating it, thinking about what avenues to take as I am now, for the sake, jobless, but still an entrepreneur, right? I'm also the co-founder of Validated Culture, and I'm wearing some of our merch as we speak. It's a BIPOC business connecting BIPOC communities. And right now, we're doing that by selling some of our branded materials. And at the same time, I thought about that conversation, or I had a conversation with my wife just yesterday along those same lines, right? About what your VAs are doing and understanding technology. And I'm going to let Uncle Sam pay me to go back to school to be a master of just that. I'm going back for technology engineering, IT engineering. And the understanding is you can't beat what's coming. Everybody is going to be using AI. Businesses are already trying to figure out how to manage infrastructure. Governments are already trying to figure out how to deal with the power. And there's going to need to be a people or a set of people in place to manage all of this infrastructure. I, sir, will be one of those people, right? Soon to be. So it is part of that pathway along my growth and development, understanding that you can't always just fight change. Change has to come, but it comes on purpose. And this change and growth and development for me is on purpose. So entrepreneurialism and my growth for education, those are all new pathways for me.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the journey, and sometimes the twists and turns are actually exactly what is needed and wanted for our next level, our next step. And do you want to tell us real briefly about, I'll pull up the website, but tell us a little bit about Validated Culture and what your guys' mission is and what you'll be doing with this platform.
The platform is a host of many resources to come. The ultimate goal is to continue to connect BIPOC businesses and BIPOC communities. So eventually, when we are done, the site will host a slew of Black businesses, a map where to connect with them, how to link with them, future interviews of other business owners that we will have on the show, some friends, some participants. Um, it's a litany of things to come. And at the moment, you can purchase all of this amazing material that we have for the community, from the community. The designs are by my partner. He's a brilliant man, and I support everything that we do and everything that he does because of what he stands for. He's a formerly incarcerated man who spent many of his time behind bars. He also served his country, and he continues to serve his community in a way that many people just don't. He literally gives the clothes off his back to the people in his community. He's constantly alerting the police to the homelessness, to the addicted people laid out that most people just walk by. So I give all of my 110 effort to grow this business alongside of him and to continue the conversation of connecting community. That's really what validated culture is about.
I love it. I love it. A man on a mission. It's exciting to see this next step, stage, and how it evolves. So I'm excited for you, Thorin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lisa, last but not least, what are you doing in the world and how are you looking at this stuff called leverage and delegation?
Well, I am an executive coach and fractional leader for small to medium-sized service-based businesses, and I definitely employ both delegation and leveraging. I delegate to my virtual assistants. They should be experts in what they're doing, in my opinion. I know what I want from them. I know what I want the end result to look like. I communicate that clearly. But when I give them a role, I leave them to it, such as my social media manager. I give her everything I want her to put out to the world. I kind of gave her a schedule from my marketing coach of how we want to put that out there, but then it's up to her to put it out there. She has all the tools. I leverage AI. I have an AI clone of myself. So she can go to my clone and have me actually respond to people's interactions on social media. So she doesn't have to make up something that I might say. She can take what somebody said and then ask me my thoughts about it, and I will put it out there for her. I have put everything that I've ever written or coached or any transcript into my AI clone. So it is me. It is how I think. It is how I would respond. And so I do a mix of delegation and leveraging, and that's what I teach and coach my clients to do, because we have to learn how to let go of wearing all of the hats. Sometimes we think we have to wear the hats because we don't know that we have enough money. We don't have enough revenues coming in yet to employ delegation. And yet, when we're resourceful, we can always find a way. And that's also where leveraging can come in. You might have a partner who you can trade some value with, right? They might be able to do something better than you and faster than you, and you might be able to do something for them better and faster. And so you can leverage in that manner also. David, you and I are leveraging because we're affiliated, right? We do some co-collaborations together to help deliver value to our clients on both sides. And so wow. I think that it is both leveraging and delegation that make our businesses and our teams whole. And I think we're very lucky to be living in this point in time in the world. I'm excited to find out where Thorin gets to with his new education in IT, because I think as people expand their education, I've been saying to people, AI is not replacing people. It is displacing you, because it's going to force you to get a better education, a better set of knowledge, or a better skill set, so that you are going to places where you are going to, I even think it's going to start pushing people out of poverty level, because now higher education access is available to everybody at any time. If they can get to a library or an internet cafe, if they have a phone with internet service, we can now learn anything at any time we want to. We can even learn how to learn to put these things to use better. And so it's just going to push us all to better skill sets. And that's going to mean that we're going to be able to have a better life in front of us.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. And one thing that came up earlier as you were sharing, and I've just seen in action, is you're someone who is very, I'd say you can see where collaboration can happen, whether it's with you and what you're doing or between people. And that's something that like comes naturally. It's like, oh, I'm partnering with this person. And it's like, yeah, like that's just how Lisa kind of operates. And I learned about that years ago. And what I found was initially when you learn the value of collaboration and thinking about how you might collaborate, like that's leverage. That's all of what we're talking about. If you're not used to thinking of it or seeing it, it is a muscle that you got to start to say, oh, how might Lisa and Thorin do something together? Or how might Brian and David and Lisa do something together? And then as your mind starts to like do those, call it, gymnastics, it becomes a little bit more fluid. And then it's like, oh, I see opportunity here. I see opportunity there. And that's an important, I think, component of both what we're talking about, whether it's delegation or leverage in many ways. So thank you for that perspective as well, Lisa. We're going to do this. Brian messaged and said he's had to bounce. So we're going to do a final comment. And I'll go to Thorin first, then we'll go to Lisa, and I'll do my comment as well. If you were speaking to someone who is new to leverage or new to delegation, it's like a whole new concept. What's one thing you would suggest to them in that way? Like oh, like yeah, you should be delegating and leveraging, but it's new to you. This is what I learned, or this is one of the lessons that I learned initially. And for me, my lesson is like it can be challenging. And so you want to think about what are the things that are maybe most challenging to you or that you don't want to be doing. And I think we address some of that in this conversation, and then think about who is the best person for technology or automation that would help with that. So I think the first thing is identify what the challenge you're facing is, and then think about what the solution might be. I'll go to you, Thor. Any tip or like wisdom to like the new delegator or the new leverager?
Outside of all the ones that you just laid out.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't. You could repeat. That's
Yes,
okay.
no worries. I'll tell you what my biggest struggle was and how I overcame it. My biggest challenge for me was not being their therapist, right? Understanding in delegation the difference between role responsibility and people responsibility. Though there's a delicate line, it shouldn't be crossed, right? It takes a real skilled hand in understanding how to manage people and in their position without being their personal source of everything, right? And that took some years of skill building that I had to get. That took some executive leadership training that I needed, right? That I didn't know I needed. And it took a team of individuals around me to coach me into being less of their therapist, right? And more of their executive director, making responsible decisions is something that people have to learn to do and something that I had to learn to not do for them. So that was part of my delegation journey, and I hope that it helps somebody else.
I think that's a beautiful distinction for this conversation, like the difference between role and people responsibilities, and where are we spending time and attention, and where should we, and how do you deal with both? Because I think you also said earlier on in the conversation, Thorin, is like we're managing a lot of different things in our leadership. And sometimes it's, hey, this is what the role is, and this is how you do it. And then also, how are you doing today? Like, are you in a good mindset? And I think both of those are important, but we also need to know where the lines are and how much energy and focus we give to each of them too.
Yes, sir.
Brilliant. Lisa, what do you got? What do you got? What's one lesson to the new leverager or delegator?
I think this is a multi-layered question, and I think it really depends on where they're coming in. I would, speaking to the person who has the greatest concerns about letting go, look for the lowest bar, not the biggest challenge they have, but the lowest bar that they could let go of and start to experiment with. Because sometimes in expanding your threshold of control, or as other people put it, getting out of your comfort zone, you don't want to take a 5-mile leap. You might want to take a half of a baby step and test the waters. I'm not necessarily a test the waters girl. I'm a FAFO. I just get out there and get it done and find out what happens. But some people need to test the waters, and it's important to understand who I'm working with. So I first want to understand who I'm working with, because I wouldn't want them to shut down or focus on the failure so much that they just can't allow the delegation or the leverage to happen in an organic way that benefits them. So sometimes I go for the lowest bar, such as social media posting, right? A low bar. Can we just find somebody who can take your posts and consistently put them out at the right times for you every day for a month? Can you put aside $200 and make that happen? And so then it becomes a low bar of entry, and then they start to feel relief, right? Once that starts to happen, and maybe they get a little bit more traction than they were getting before because they were inconsistent with posting, right? Because they didn't have time, because they're wearing all the hats. And all of a sudden they get a little bit relief. Well, now you can go for the next level up, that next challenge of, hey, maybe this person can now take the summary of the meeting notes and write the email. You can still approve the email, but now you can have your assistant can take the notes and start delegating out and doing these emails for you, so that you don't have to spend your time in non-revenue producing exercises, and you can focus more on your zone of genius and revenue production. So that's kind of how I start to maneuver people, but it's person to person. Some people are bigger risk takers and some people are more cautious.
I love it. This is a beautiful side to this conversation. Like I just learned a new version of the KISS acronym. Some people say keep it simple, Steve, keep it simple, Sally, keep it simple, stupid, keep it simple or starve, was the newer one that I've heard. But sometimes if we try to jump into the deep end, that's gonna just cause us to drown. But can we, tiptoe in and start small, start with a little thing that we can start to play around with this delegation and leverage conversation. And I think that's brilliant advice. Like wherever you're at, just start trying it out in different ways. It could be very, very simple, very, very, as Lisa said, the lowest bar, or a lower bar than trying to, like we talked about on the morning rush this morning. It's not about perfection. It's a little bit about putting in a process and making progress. So beautiful conversation today, everyone. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Thorin. Thank you for all who have tuned in or will be tuning into this conversation. Again, this is the Access 360 podcast, episode 5. And thank you, guests, for being open to the spontaneity of not knowing the topic, but coming in as amazing leaders and amazing people to shepherd this conversation along with me. With that, everyone, have a beautiful and blessed day, and we will hit pause on all of our streams and take it from there. So I stopped the YouTube, and we're okay. We're not live on YouTube anymore. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
ChatGPT along the way.
People and groups, and that's awesome. I'm excited.